We certainly are not a monolith, because it's one over there right now, lying on CNN. Welcome to Street Politics. My name is Reese. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the page, and shout out to all of our members here on the channel. All right. Fresh off of a devastating knockout at the hands of Jasmine Crockett.
He can go and cower in a corner, or he can show up and be lit on fire.
Byron Donalds has been fumbling for the mouthpiece in order to try and regain his dignity. Unfortunately, that is something that apologizing for Donald Trump just won't allow.
The reality in America is that crime is massively up.
Crime is not massively up. That's a lie.
You can bang the table all you want, but that's
lying,
not true,
Congressman. You're lying.
However, in the interest of competition, and given that we have had all of these conversations surrounding black men, I thought I would give him another opportunity, this time taking on Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock. Who will do us the honors? Why don't you get us started, Reverend?
This race is going to be tight all the way to the end. And I think the important thing is that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz keep doing what they're doing, and that is to center the concerns of ordinary people. Here's the contrast that the people of Georgia have in front of them. They have one candidate who's focused on their needs, ensuring that we continue to lower the costs for folks on everyday goods, the one who has capped the costs of insulin and other prescription drugs, who passed a tax cut for middle and working class families, the expanded child tax credit, which we would like to see extended. She's focused on ordinary people. And then you've got Donald Trump, who's focused on himself. That's what this race is about. We'll continue to make the case until November 5th. And in the end, I think Georgians are going to get it right. They're going to support Kamala Harris just as they supported me.
Well, this is pretty unobjectionable as far as I'm concerned. Even Trump's own black outreach has focused on himself. Hey, they trying to get me just like y'all. Yeah, when it comes to black people, I am the best for black people since Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, I know you because you think I'm talking about how much I'm doing for you. No, this is about my resume. Yeah, I really don't care.
She's got several events courting black voters. I know that you are talking about the black vote coming out, particularly black men, for Donald Trump. You're trying to help him along with that. To that point, can you talk specifically about what Donald Trump would do policy-wise in a second term to help black Americans?
Before you answer that, Byron, let's just have a look at some of the highlights of your black outreach up to this point.
During Jim Crow, the black family was together. That's right. During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively.
Why is the ex-president calling somebody in my barbershop? This has nothing to do with small black businesses.
You're normalizing an insurrectionist. Have you no shame?
I don't ever pay you to do this stuff, man.
Byron?
Sure, and thank you for that question. What Donald Trump is going to do is going to be actually quite similar to what he did in his first term. When you lower tax rates, when you cut these reckless and crazy policies that are now in the Kamala Harris administration, and you cut those regulations down, what it does is it frees up the ability for businesses to thrive, for people to be able to earn more money, for them to be able to keep more money in their pockets.
Okay, let me stop you right there, Byron. How you gonna pay for it?
To me, the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff. Firm, just to help it, but to me, it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary.
Tariffs, do you think that will bring in the revenues? To use another bipartisan group, Peterson Institute, they say they only bring in $200 billion. That is that's barely the cost of two of your promises.
Also, it sounds to me a lot like trickle-down economics. That's exactly what that sounds like to me. Oh no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We gonna cut their tax rates, and then they gonna have so much money, they gonna come get your goods and services. So you gonna be all right.
All of his economic policies actually have a stabilizing effect on prices, and they grow our economy. You couple that with his energy policies. He calls it drill, baby, drill, but what it is being energy dominant in the United States of America. That also allows for us to put a cap on these massive price increases under the Kamala Harris administration.
Oh, you mean the inflation? Is that what you're talking about? The inflation? Talking about the inflation that's better here than anywhere else in the world because of the global pandemic. That okay? All right, I'm just checking.
What that means in particular for black families is that you have an ability to earn more money, keep more money, wages actually growing when you adjust them for inflation. And then the big stat, and this happened during the first Trump administration, nobody likes to talk about it. I heard Senator Warnock mention it.
It said no, Warnock, no, you don't need to jump him. You don't need to jump him. No, guys, we gonna go to you in a second. I see you foaming at the mouth.
Wages adjusted for inflation were massively up under Donald Trump for black men, for black families, but for all Americans. The wage gap that Democrats love to lecture about, the wage gap in 2019 was actually shrinking under Donald Trump's administration, his economic policies, his energy policies, and his regulatory policies.
Can I just go back to the tax?
So that's the agenda that black men are looking at.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you for that. If you know he up here lying, why you keep bringing him out here then? Thank you for your nonsense. Now let me hit you with some facts.
Kamala Harris would say, or would ask the question about how tax cuts for wealthy Americans will help the black community. What's the answer to that?
Well, Kamala Harris would say something like that, but we know that she's wrong because economically she's been wrong for the last 1,400 days. If you look at Tax Cut and Jobs Act.
What is her job? Is she in charge of the Fed? She in charge of the Fed? No, she in charge of the Treasury. She in charge of the Treasury. No, she president. She vice president? Wow, dang. So they put the vice president in charge of our financial policy and the border?
It cut tax rates across the board, mostly for middle class families. So this is why wages adjusted for inflation for black families was higher under Donald Trump than any other administration in the history of our country. That is a record of economic success.
Let me just quickly play for you what former President Obama said exactly on this question of the economy a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it was pretty good because it was my economy. It wasn't something he did. I spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me the last time. He didn't do nothing except those big tax cuts.
How do you respond to that?
Very easily.
And by the way, I would add, this is what was left by those big tax cuts.
Nearly $33 trillion. That's what the U.S. national debt was as of early September 2023.
We really put a dude that went bankrupt that many times in charge of the economy.
I was working in finance during Barack Obama's administration. Let me tell you, the economy under his especially the last 5 years, was growing at about 1 to 1.5% per year. I think at the time, President Obama was saying that, this era of large economic growth is something of the past. We're going to have a more consistent economy. Well, in his words, a consistent economy meant one that barely grew. So when Donald Trump came in, he brought his tax cut policy in, which cut taxes across the board for everybody in our country, coupled the fact that he did cut massive regulations from the Obama administration. And what did we see? Economic growth in the United States went from 1.5% under Barack Obama to 3.5% under Donald Trump. Wages adjusted for inflation, like I said, because it's the truth, increased for every subgroup of Americans in our country. The wealth gap was closing. We were actually booming economically far more than we did under Barack Obama. So that's a cool statement he made on the stump, but it's not true.
Well, Byron Donalds, that's a cool statement that you just made. Let's go to his actual statement that he made on the stump.
And the reason some people think, Well, I don't know. I remember that economy when he first came in being pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good because it was my economy. We had 75 straight months of job growth that I handed over to him. It wasn't something he did. I had spent 8 years cleaning up the mess that the Republicans had left me the last time.
Let's also look at the state of the economy when he took over.
The crisis written in the fine print of subprime mortgages, on the ledger lines of once mighty financial institutions, and on the pink slips that have upended the lives of so many people across this country and cost the economy 2.6 million jobs last year alone.
So if I'm following you, Barack Obama did nothing with the economy and gets no credit for what happened between 2008 and 2016, even though you had 75 straight months of growth. He gets no credit for that. Donald Trump gets all of the credit for the boom that happens after he takes office in 2017, but none of the blame for the pandemic, which he made worse by the way he managed it. He gets none of the blame for what that did to his economy, but the Biden-Harris administration gets all of the blame for the carnage that was created by the pandemic that he mismanaged and how that affected their economy.
China.
But then Donald Trump also gets credit for the bounce back that they handled from COVID. He gets credit for that, but then gets to criticize them for the inflation.
You can say Kamala, you can say Kamala. I said, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter what I say. I couldn't care less.
And also, this is Kamala Harris, the vice president, the one that you're blaming for all of that. I just want to make sure I got the talking points right. Byron Donalds, you still selling that stuff?
Congressman, before I let you go, I do want to ask about
Sure.
a law that Congress passed, a new version of the Electoral Count Act. They passed it 2 years ago, and it makes it harder to object to certifying election results on January 6, 2025 and beyond. Some Trump allies have argued that's unconstitutional. The House Speaker hasn't taken a clear position. Should Congress follow that law in certifying the 2024 presidential election?
Look, I think when you're talking about the election this November, the thing that people want is that local jurisdictions follow the law passed by the states. As long as everybody does that, there's not going to be any problem certifying this election this November. But what really matters about this election are the issues facing the American people, not the Electoral College Count Act. Because what we need is a president who's going to secure our border, actually make our foreign policy be strong again and make sense again. That's what matters.
Are you going to follow the new law about certifying?
And I've been very clear, Dana, as long as states and jurisdictions follow election procedures in their states, there will be no problem for me or anybody on Capitol Hill.
All right. Well, that's a giant loophole that you're leaving there, which there's no evidence that has not happened. It didn't happen in 2020.
No, that wasn't a loophole. That was a whole front door that he walked out of with any insinuation that he was going to be okay with the election should it not go the way that they wanted to. Just call a thing a thing. Senator Warnock, come knock this dude out.
Listen, let me tell you something this morning. Black men are not going to vote for Donald Trump in any significant numbers. There'll be some. We're not a monolith.
We certainly are not a monolith, because it's one over there right now, lying on CNN.
Black folk in general, and black men in particular, consider who Donald Trump is, as they consider the fact that this is the man who literally took out a full-page ad in the New York Times saying that these young teenagers back in the 1980s who were accused of a horrific crime should receive the death penalty. And then when it was proven that the exonerated five, the Central Park Five, were actually innocent. Donald Trump has shown no deal of concern about what they went through, no bit of contrition about it.
I have to challenge you right there, Senator Warnock. He definitely has shown concern with what has happened, not specifically to the Central Park Five, but just with black men and the criminal justice system. When he was out here trying to advocate for their vote and get sympathy for his situation, that's when all of a sudden he identified with people like that.
He's doubled down on his position. This is who he is. And black men know that as they watch him deal with his own criminal problems and concerns, that the criminal justice system certainly doesn't handle them the way it handles him. On the other hand, you've got Kamala Harris, who in her work as a prosecutor found ways to give people a path towards a better life, who has spent her whole life as a lawyer, as a senator, and now as vice president, centering the concerns of ordinary people. Again, we're not a monolith, but this idea that large numbers of black men are going to vote for Donald Trump is not going to happen.
We certainly not a monolith, because the Cartier family's still out here.
They stole the elections in 2020. We shouldn't be surprised.
Listen, it's important for folks to show up. And that's something that I push and preach every election, that your vote is your voice. Your voice is your human dignity. Not to show up is a vote. Well, I've already told you what I think about that. I don't think that there'll be significant numbers of black men showing up for Donald Trump. And I think as we push through the election, it's important to continue to help people to understand the work that we have done, capping the cost of prescription drugs. We've done some $170 billion in student debt relief that's helped some 5 million Americans. Donald Trump wants to end that. And so the question is, do you want your grandmother to continue to receive $35 insulin, or do you not? And the stark contrast in this race is what it is. We'll continue to make the case. And again, I believe that Georgians are going to show up for Kamala Harris the same way they showed up for me.
Well, let's just unpack that. We understand in practice that sitting out the election, or voting third party for that matter, ostensibly helps Trump. But that would only be true if the natural inclination for just a normal-brained adult would be to vote for the Democrats. Like literally part of their plan and agenda for winning any election is to suppress the vote, because when turnout is high, they literally cannot win. And even when it's low, they will still lose the popular vote. I just had to throw that in there. It's just something that's been bothering me. I mean, you don't even try and make it decent for people. You got people out here saying they gonna support a man representing a platform even they know is garbage. You know how much they gotta be laughing at you. That's who Obama was talking about.
Listen, I have a great deal of respect for President Obama, and he wasn't talking to all black men. He was talking to men who are talking about sitting on the sidelines. We got to talk to everybody because our coalition is broad. But at the end of the day, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are doing the work that every candidate has to do. You got to earn people's vote. And so that's the work that they're doing in a moment like this. When you present a program which eliminates the amount of student debt that we've seen happen, this closes the racial wealth gap. When you address the importance of historically black colleges and universities, we've invested some $16 billion in HBCUs. As a proud graduate of Morehouse College, and we have College Sunday later this morning, I know firsthand the work that this administration is doing. And I think that we've got to continue to deliver that message to the voters. And in the end, I think that folks will recognize how much is really at stake in this moment. And that the choice really is not between voting and not voting. Not to vote is a vote. It pushes Donald Trump that much closer to the White House. And that's something that we cannot afford to happen.
And he's right about that HBCU funding. You know how bad it is that they were out here bragging about things like HBCU funding and black unemployment that were better under the other guy? I mean, do you know how bottom of the barrel they have to get to try and find stuff, to try and make a case when they bragging for stuff that was better under the other guy? That's like Jerry Jones bragging that the Cowboys just showed up.
But every now and then you do some right things, and at the end of the day, you add it up, and the rights give you a better spot than the wrongs.
Which they kind of didn't. They kind of didn't show up to that, actually. Shout out to the D. You gave us all a good time on that one. And by the way, that is only dwarfed by the good time I just had by actually fact checking Byron Donalds and administering that thrashing at the hands of Senator Warnock. I think Senator Warnock got to have some more bouts. He got to have some more bouts, because I don't know that Senator Warnock has ever taken an L. You know, him and Pete Buttigieg out here undefeated. The two of them and Jasmine Crockett and AOC, that's like the four horsemen. And by the way, CNN, they all available. You don't just have to have Byron Donalds and Scout Jennings out there lying every day. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and also a special thank you to all of our subscribers and members here on the channel. I'm just about to roll out the first batch of badges and emoji, and I'm taking your suggestions on what you think would look nice in the chat or look nice next to your name when you leave a comment. Email me at reese@reesewaters.com and let me know what your suggestion would be. We are on the precipice of 200K. What do? We throw a party? We do a special live? You know what? I'm gonna surprise you.